We've now got a bit of an international feel for the virtual model railway exhibition, because we're heading up to the National Railway Museum, where we meet Tsar Anthony Coulls, who is in charge of their latest exhibition, which has a definite Russian theme, I believe.
Certainly does. It's Trans Siberian Railway, the world's longest railway.
How long is the Trans Siberian? I mean, the Trans Siberian Railway is just one of those. It's a very romantic dream of a lot of railway enthusiasts to travel. I mean, I've never quite got my head round where it goes from to, how long it is, how long it takes.
Okay, well, I mean, if you want to start, to paraphrase Douglas Adams, you know, the Trans Siberian Railway is big. Not quite infinitely big, but it's 5,772 miles in length. It basically runs from Moscow to Vladivostok, and it unites Russia east to west. It crosses 8 time zones, which absolutely blows my mind, because whilst it crosses 8 time zones, the train runs to Moscow time. So the clocks are set on the train for a particular time, and you can find out that you're having dinner at 3 in the morning. Apparently, it must be something completely and utterly bizarre to do it. It can take 7 to 8 days to undertake the journey. With some of the newer high-speed trains, it's maybe more like 5, but there are also quite high-end premier trains that take the best part of 2 weeks. So wow. It's a huge endeavour. I mean, you know, we think of London to Edinburgh being a long distance, or even, you know, Penzance up to Inverness and beyond, but the Trans-Siberian just goes beyond that. I mean, Moscow to St. Petersburg alone on the express trains is 4 hours. That's just monstrous, really.
I'm hoping that the trains do offer a level of luxury then, because I don't think I'd want to be doing that in a second-hand pacer or something like that.
No, well, they wouldn't fit, because the gauge is different for a start. But I have a horrible feeling that a pacer wouldn't make the first day. But we'll move swiftly on from that. The Trans-Siberian is an incredible undertaking. The Russian railway system did develop in the same way that the UK did. I mean, there's a lot of private enterprise in the UK railway system growth, but Russia went it alone. They decided they didn't want to have foreign influence, particularly, and that all railway development was to be funded and controlled by the state. So it's quite haphazard.
I was going to say, does that explain the track gauge then? Because what is the Russian track gauge?
It's 5 feet. It's 5 feet square. Yeah, there was a degree of things being converted to standard gauge around the period of the Second World War, and then it was converted immediately back. I think some of the German Kriegslocks were made to be dual gauge for running into Russia. But yeah, I mean, you know, Russia went it alone. Some of the earliest mainline railways in Russia were made with UK engineers, and the first line from St. Petersburg to the Tsar's palace at Tsarskoye Selo opened in October 1836 with British locos. The first successful steam loco in Russia was actually made in Shildon, about a mile from where I'm sitting talking to you, by Timothy Hackworth and his company. Timothy couldn't take it out to Russia, so he sent his 16-year-old son, John Wesley Hackworth, a splendid Methodist name if ever there was one, and he went out as a 16-year-old Methodist. The loco was put back together, trialled, and blessed by a Russian Orthodox priest. And we have the most incredible letter from John Wesley to his mum. You can imagine, you know, 16, 17-year-old now being sent out to unknown countries to commission the steam loco, and the change in culture must have been amazing, but it was done. But like I say, you know, that was an initial line of maybe 30 miles. Trans-Siberian doesn't happen until the 1890s. There's lots of ideas about uniting Russia by rail, but because it's funded by the state and Russia is so big, the government don't really have well, the conditions aren't right to build it. There's a number of private enterprises come in and say, let's build a railway, and the state says no. But what happens in the 1880s, 1890s is that the route is surveyed in 1887, which is quite something to look at 5,700 miles of railway. Siberia, of course, is a land of contrasts and a very inhospitable country, or full of permafrost, difficult landscapes. To survey a normal railway 5,700 miles is quite an undertaking, but to do it in a land that you don't really know, it's a feat of ingenuity and endurance for the surveying team alone. But the railway doesn't actually happen on the ground until 1891 it begins, and a number of circumstances come together. Alexander III, who's the Tsar at the time, appoints a guy called Sergei Vita as his finance minister, and Sergei Vita can see the importance of this railway strategically, economically, and technically across the railway, because Russia is united in name, but it's not united physically. It's bringing a lot of imports in from outside. It's bringing stuff in from the west. It's bringing stuff in from the east, but it can't access its own natural reserves particularly well. And Vita himself was actually a railwayman. He worked his way up from booking clerk through to finance minister. So he knew how railways ticked. He knew how to build one. He knew who to talk to. He knew how to run one. And between Vita and Alexander III, a decree went out to the Tsarevich, Nicholas, who was Alexander III's son, saying, you be chair of the Railway Construction Committee and get it done. So it wasn't get Brexit done, it was get Trans Siberian done, and get it done quickly. So from 1891 through to 1895-96, the first bit of railway was constructed, and it opens not in throughout its entire length as a railway. This is where it gets a wee bit messy, because it's built about 12 to 16 different railways that all link up. It's a good job they had surveyed it so they don't miss. But you do have some bits of landscape where it doesn't quite work yet. There's a huge great lake called Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal exists in a mountainous, rocky area, and it was deemed too hard to put a railway round the lake. So there was the most fantastic bit of, you may remember the old Triang completely knocked down kits where things were made and in the factory, and then you bought them and put them back together at home. And that's what happened with Lake Baikal. In the late 1890s, a train ferry, an icebreaker, was made Armstrong Whitworth in Newcastle, SS Baikal, and its sister ship SS Angra, though Baikal was the train ferry itself, whereby you put an entire train on the ferry, bumbled it across the lake, and then went back for more, or took a train in the other direction. They were made in Newcastle by Armstrong Whitworth, supervised or watched by Russian engineers and technicians. Then they were dismantled, and Baikal was dismantled, taken in pieces over to Russia, and reconstructed on the shores of Lake Baikal, where it was launched and commissioned. Absolutely amazing. Hundreds of boxes of ship taken over to Russia and reconstructed and used there. But that becomes the Achilles heel for the railway, because in 1905 you have the Russo-Japanese War, and the Russians think, yeah, great, we've got a railway, we'll quell the uprisings by using the train. But of course, Lake Baikal is under ice for a lot of the year. The train ferry is slow as an icebreaker. They try taking locomotives across the ice. They try laying track across the ice, Wallace and Gromit style. The ice either breaks and the loco sinks, or they have to dismantle the locos to get them over in pieces. It's not really very good. So 1905, the edict comes out and says, finish the railway properly. It's another 10, 15 years before the Trans Siberian Railway properly exists across the entire of Russia, because the initial part of the line to get to the east runs through Manchuria, is what's called the Chinese Eastern Railway. So it's actually the 5th of October 1916 before the Trans Siberian Railway as we know it is complete. Since then, there have been a number of other developments that provide other routes to the east from the edge of Lake Baikal, and you know, they all make up the Trans Siberian Railway. So you have to be careful when you're booking your ticket, if you want to go to Vladivostok, that you make sure you get on the right bit of railway. Otherwise, you will end up in the wrong part of Siberia, and there are no other ways of getting there.
Wow, I mean, that is a heck of a history you've got there of the line. Now, this is all about an exhibition that you've got taking place at York, and I believe there's a smaller part at the Science Museum in London.
Yeah, the Trans Siberian Railway. It's entitled "The World's Longest Railway Journey," and it's like nothing else on Earth. And the concept for the exhibition came out of another exhibition 120 years ago. The railway was launched onto the world stage in 1900 at an exposition in Paris. You know, there was the promise of the Orient, the intrigue, the mystery. You know, travel east to west was something that was really quite unusual, not known about. And what we wanted to do was to celebrate that achievement. And we're working in partnership with Russian Railways, and what we've done is look at the story of the construction of the railway, why it was so important to Russia, why it was so important to the world, that there is this link from east to west. And we've been able to look into some of the most incredible collections and archives across the world. Not very much in the UK. We have a few things in the NRM, like a couple of tickets and some photographs, but we've got some amazing things coming out of the Central Museum of Rail Transport, the Russian Railway Museum, Russian State Archive. We've got the entry from Nicholas II's diary of the day that he laid the foundation stone in Vladivostok. We've got John Wesley Hackworth's passport from when he took the first loco to Russia from County Durham. We have so many images, photographs, stories. The railway just heaves with things. It's almost a case of what do you leave out after 5,772 miles. But the absolute blockbusters for me are the world's longest painting. So the world's longest railway had the world's longest painting, which was made for the Paris Exposition in 1900. It's a watercolor by an artist called Piasecki, and it's the best part of 1 kilometer long, because this thing wound on rollers past a train window to give people at the exposition an idea of what the route of the railway would look like. So, you know, marketing is nothing new under the sun, and that's a super thing. It's on loan to us from the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. And then
I've got to ask,
the absolute jewel in...
Before we move on to the absolute jewel, how on earth do you display a 1 kilometer long painting? Because that's the Science Museum, isn't it, at the moment? And that's got. I've been in the Science Museum. It's not that big.
No. Well, what we're going to do is display a section of the painting. It has to be rolled up. We can only fit a certain amount in the actual case itself. So the rest of it will be on a roll about 60 centimeters across at each end, because that is just how 1 kilometer looks. But what we do have is a digital copy of it, digital representation, which will be able to be shown, so that you can still appreciate the entirety of that painting. It was restored at the Hermitage a few years ago and digitized as they went. So that's really quite exciting. But yes, it is a challenge of how on earth you display it. Not just a painting anyway, but how do you display a 120-year-old painting? We can't keep winding it backwards and forwards like an old VHS cassette.
I suspect it might be more reliable than a 120-year-old VHS cassette, but
this is
anyway.
True.
However, this isn't the star of the exhibition. This is it. You've got the world's largest painting, and it's not the star of the show. So what is it?
No. Well, as we're talking models and looking at the virtual exhibition, what we have coming to us, the absolute gem, is a Fabergé egg. of the Trans Siberian Railway. So what, you might say? But the Fabergé egg is something really special. You know, they made 2 of them a year as Easter and presents for the Tsar and his mother. Sorry, the Tsar's mother or the Tsar's wife. And what 1900-1901, the railway was so important to Nicholas II that he commissioned the Fabergé egg to have a minute clockwork train that folds up and fits inside the egg itself. On the outside of the egg is a map of the Trans Siberian Railway with the major stations noted in jewels, which is beautiful. But it opens up. So inside the egg is a minute clockwork locomotive and carriages representing the one of the trains that would have run along that route, and it includes the final car in the train is one of the church carriages. So church and state go together in Russia, and as the railway went its way from west to east and vice versa, as settlements grew up, before a main church was built, they actually had a church carriage which was attached to the trains, and that went along to minister to both the workers and the settlers as they went. It's a super piece from the Kremlin in Moscow. It's, as far as I'm aware, it's certainly for well over 100 years, it's not been out of Russia. It has been on display before, but it's never been seen in the UK other than in photographs and on the internet. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'm looking forward very much to seeing it.
I imagine I'm imagining for a start that they don't let you keep it on your desk while you're while you're putting the exhibition together. And
no, it would be the most fantastic executive toy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I'm imagining this exhibition hasn't been easy to put together then, because I mean, you don't just ring up the Kremlin and say, "Hi guys, can we borrow your Fabergé egg?" Or can we borrow your 1 kilometre long painting?
No, it has been the most incredible international collaboration. I have a colleague, Sasha Smanova, who is a native of St. Petersburg, and she's worked incredibly hard on this as liaison. She and I had a week in Moscow and St. Petersburg in 2019 where we went round a lot of the museums and a lot of the archives, being shown some of these stunning pieces, and making an initial selection so we knew who to approach. I mean, we've got things like a petition from the townspeople of Tomsk saying to that's not the Womble, saying to the railway committee, this thing is so important, please will you put the railway through our town? And it's signed by 100, 120 of the townspeople, the good burghers, the officials of Tomsk. That's never been out before. Official reports signed by the Tsar. Like I say, there's letters from the Tsar to his mum saying, how great it is that the railway's being built. Some really lovely little bits of personalia amongst this massive engineering, because the railway has hundreds of bridges. It's the engineering in it is monstrous. It's massive. We'd have liked to have brought over a model of one of the viaducts, but the logistics of it have just defeated us. But this viaduct was so fantastic that it won prizes at the Paris Expo in 1900 and was such a massive steel construction that the Parisians referred to this viaduct with the Eiffel Tower as the bride and groom. So everything that we saw was stunning. It was working with real tangible history that just oozed out of every page we looked at, and so many things that we were able to see. It became an embarrassment of riches, and as you know, with an exhibition space, it's not a case of what can you put in, but what do you have to leave out. We could have filled the whole NRM with this and still had not had chance to tell everything.
That's quite incredible. Right. Well, I think we better get down to the to the important parts of when does the exhibition when's the exhibition running, and obviously it's challenging times for getting people into places as well. So when can we go, and how do we book? Because I imagine there's a lot of people now thinking, well, I'm never going to get on the Trans Siberian, but this could be the second best thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. You know, we do talk about the experience of travelling it, and the experience varies from the everyday passenger to the high end, and from 1900 to now, it's a very different experience. But yeah, we hope to capture a bit of that in the exhibition. You can come to it. It's at both York and at South Kensington, at the Science Museum. It opens 25th, 26th of March next year. And when I say it's at both sites, it doesn't actually repeat itself. We've made sure that the two exhibitions complement each other. So hopefully people will feel inspired if they go and see one to go and then visit the other, which is really quite exciting. We've never really done an exhibition that runs alongside itself before. It's always been at York or at London, or at York and then moved to London. So to have it concurrently is really quite fun. Given the current restrictions, we're asking that visitors will book online. That's not actually live as yet because we're still a number of months away, but I would say to folks, do keep an eye on both the Science Museum and the National Railway Museum's website for announcements of when the tickets and the booking goes live. And I'd also say we look forward to seeing people there, but not entirely sure I'll be able to get there either. So, it is a peculiar thing working from home and putting an exhibition together, and not entirely sure that you're going to see it yourself.
That must be incredibly frustrating. Well, I hope you do make it there. I hope I can make it there, because certainly I want to see. I want to see both of the exhibitions. It sounds absolutely fascinating. And as I say, short of jumping on a train in Moscow, I think it's going to be the next best thing. And to be fair, if you do jump on a train, you don't get to see the Fabergé egg anywhere. I don't suppose they stick that in one of the carriages. So it sounds absolutely incredible, Anthony. Thank you for your time. But we can't let you go without asking our quick fire questions to you. And so very quickly, let's start off. What is your favourite exhibition breakfast?
Well, my favourite exhibition breakfast has to be the full English. You can't really look at doing 7-8 hours a day at a show without having something to set you up for the day.
Excellent.
I only have one that sticks out and remembers that I can remember, and that was at Bootham Terrace at York Show, April 1990. But I suspect you may well have been there as well, Phil, or at least in a different B&B.
Yes, certainly I will have been up there about that sort of time. And yes, the York breakfasts, most of them were.
It was the year we took. It was the year we took Thomas, and we had triple-headed Thomases in the rooms at about 4 o'clock on the Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is just you now. You're ruining your whole reputation there now, Anthony. As not taking the trains properly seriously. If Vladimir hears that, he's going to want his egg back before you get your hands on it. Right. Okay. What is the best layout you've ever seen at a show?
It's awful, really, trying to choose favourites after the best part of 40 years of exhibition going, and it's like being asked to choose between your children, isn't it? But I think there's a couple. Personally, from operations point of view, it's been a long time since I've done exhibitions, but I used to really enjoy operating both Macduff and Scotland Street Yard, both from the late day of Elborn. I think they were wonderful layouts and opened my mind to what you could do with pretty straightforward 4mm stuff, a bit of imagination and a bit of time. So from an operating point of view and playing with trains, I loved those layouts. But from looking at ones and the sheer visual impact, one that stands out to me was I think it was the Manchester Model Railway Club Curator, just because it was trains in the landscape, and model railways for me as one of the ways that they could be. You're representing an entire thing, and without putting Pendon in the mix. Curator really was fantastic because it was on the circuit. And it represented a railway in the landscape, and what landscape that was.
Excellent choice. Right, now here's the big one. What is your favourite cake at a show?
I'm going to be completely utterly biased and again go back 30 odd years to Leamington Show, when various people would make the cake, including my mum, bless her, yeah. And I think your mum as well, Phil. Yeah. And really nothing beats good homemade cuisine.
You're not too fussy, basically. That's what you're saying. Good choice there. Okay, okay. What's the strangest? We've been asking people what the strangest question they've ever been asked at a show is, but I'm suspecting the strangest question you've ever been asked in the museum, possibly.
That's again a really chewy one. There's so many questions and so many comments that come through a lifetime, and I think one of the best ones is actually a question that came with volunteering on the Tarleton Railway. I've been on the footplate there for 30 years, and we have a loco called Tom Roll, which was made in 1991, and the story that I remember was the engine's taking water, and it's got the steam injector on, filling the boiler up. And guy comes and says, "That's a very modern locomotive. When was it built?" It's 1991. Yeah. It's so modern, it's got a toilet. I said, "What do you mean it's got a toilet?" He says, "Well," he says, "Listen," he says, "I can hear the cistern filling." And
That's brilliant. Okay, and then finally, what do you consider the best ready-to-run model ever?
Well, I think we get so used to wonderful high standards now that you could look at so many releases each year. But for me, I think the groundbreaker has to be, and usual disclaimer, other manufacturers and models are available, but going through the process with the Locomotion Models prototype Deltic was absolutely incredible. The drawings didn't exist for that. So that was the first loco that I'm aware of being 3D scanned to create drawings and then create a model. And when that came out for the first time, you know, the process is now well known. Lots of people have done exclusives, lots of people have done specials. But when prototype Deltic came out, that really, to me, was a game changer in terms of what it looked like, and just something that was a beautiful thing to behold. Followed very shortly by City of Truro, of course, but as you know, Phil, we still have yet to do the BR Black version that you and I hanker after. Perhaps that might be next year's special. Let's see. But going on the flip side of it, something like the little Hornby 040 Peckett. Who'd have thought, when you were teaching me how to solder and do etch brass kits, that we would find an industrial for sale of such high quality for less than 100 quid? I think that's stunning. It
just shows you how much the model railway world has changed over the years. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, Anthony. It's been great. I'm sure we'll put the details of the website on the screen. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people now suddenly showing an interest in Russian railways.
Fantastic. Look forward to it.